Ricardo was watching the students chatting from the top of a building. He just wanted to put an end to that stupid game. A man who had previously beaten him was yelling at him. He said Ricardo had neglected the cleaning again. There was still a lot of mess on the floor. When Ricardo looked at him, the man demanded how he dared look at him like that. Kicking him, the man said that cleaning the house was his job. They had raised him after his parents died. The woman watching everything commented with a smile. She said it was expected given the kind of parents he had. They were terrible adoptive parents. Opening the door to another room, he found a boy who said it was his fault. Then intentionally spilling soda on the floor, he claimed that mess was Ricardo's. Approaching Ricardo, who was already battered, he mockingly asked if he wasn't being kind and teased him further. When Ricardo arrived at school, he found his desk covered in scribbles with a vase of flowers on it. Everyone laughed and mocked him behind his back. The teacher entering the classroom and noticing his desk began scolding him, asking what he had done to it. Then Ricardo was shoved against the lockers. 3 of his classmates insulted him. They demanded that he pay them 2,000 yen every day. In the end, Ricardo was so incompetent that he couldn't do anything. He looked at the boys and clenched his fists. Someone kicked him in the stomach. This was followed by a blow to his face. As the beating continued, one of the boys called him pathetic. He accused him of mocking them. They told him to ask his parents for money if he didn't have any. While being beaten, Ricardo thought about how life and everyone in it were garbage. He felt he was even worse. When they stopped hitting him, his phone fell to the ground and one of the bullies noticed. As he reached to pick up his phone, the boy stomped on it. Seeing the cracked screen, he mockingly apologized, claiming his foot slipped. When Ricardo lowered his head, the bully raised his leg to step on it again. However, someone stopped him. They told him to give it a rest. It was Nishi, the star of the Western-style archery team. He was a recent winner of the national tournament. All the students were surprised, and the girls were charmed by him. One of them commented that he was amazing. She said even when helping a loser like Ricardo, he was impressive. Nishi gripped the bully's shoulder tightly. The bully asked what he wanted. He wondered how strong Nishi was as his shoulder hurt. Behind them, one of the boys grabbed a baseball bat to attack the archer. Nishi punched him before he could swing. With the man on the ground, Nishi remarked that seeing such things on the streets was unpleasant. He then told everyone to leave. Taka and his friends left immediately. They called it nonsense after they were gone. Nishi crouched near Ricardo and asked if he was dead. He told him to try fighting back. He said they only acted that way because Ricardo did nothing. He questioned how he could claim to be living like that. Standing up, Ricardo turned his back on Nishi. He asked what he knew. Nishi was surprised to see Ricardo standing firm after such a beating. He wondered if he had taken less damage than it seemed. Amazed, he wondered if Ricardo had dodged the attacks. At the last second, he dismissed the thought. He muttered to himself that it was like a movie. Now back to the present moment, Ricardo watched the students laughing. They were playing and talking to each other from the top of the building. He sat on the ground. He stared at his broken phone with a mix of sadness and anguish. Looking up, he said it was all over. He was tired of living with that pain. He climbed the fence surrounding the rooftop. Reaching the edge, he sat with his arms outstretched. He said he would just put an end to that stupid game. However, lightning began to appear in the sky. Circles started forming between the bolts. From the circles, binary code in the form of bars began descending from the sky. It moved toward the city, destroying buildings. Phones all around started emitting strange noises. This scared their users and caused the devices to fall to the ground. Ricardo wondered how lightning could appear when the weather had been clear. He asked what was going on as he heard a noise. Looking at the students, he saw one of them screaming in fear as their phone acted strangely. The phone displayed binary codes, which began forming a bubble. The bubble grew larger until it took shape. It terrified the student. It transformed into a raging monster that grinned at him. Monsters like dragons and goblins and other beasts emerged from all the students' phones. They began chasing them. Ricardo, who was safe on the terrace, heard cries for help and saw the students being attacked. They were all knocked down one by one. The boy couldn't understand what was happening. Hordes of mysterious monsters appeared suddenly all over the world. The fabric of society was destroyed in an instant. It is believed that the global population was reduced to less than 1/10. The origin of the cataclysm was unknown. A certain group of young people discovered the truth. At first, it was just an unknown fact. The monsters emerged from people's smartphones. In the world that followed, survivors gave that day a name. It is now the Day of Judgment. Sitting on the railing of the school terrace, Ricardo wonders if it was true. He questions if the monsters from fantasy worlds were abruptly wiping out humanity. Smiling, he says he managed to put an end to it. Below them, several people were screaming for help and being attacked. He says it was a death dream. Everyone who once insulted or mocked him was being attacked. He was happy and said it served them right. All who made a fool of him were now in the claws of the monsters. They could go to hell. Still smiling, Ricardo wonders how that dream could feel so realistic. Even people unrelated to him were being pursued. Watching the scene, the boy despairs. He asks what was happening. He wonders why the dream was so long to come to an end. His life was a disaster. His parents were gone, and everyone around him was awful. Even his brother didn't matter. None of it mattered now. Crying, the boy admits it wasn't right. No matter how he looked at it, it wasn't right for people to end up that way. While lost in thought, a noise is heard and the terrace door opens. A goblin enters through it. Startling him, it was carrying a head. Upon seeing it, he realized it wasn't a dream. At that moment, he instinctively understood that it was real. It was absolutely real. The goblin leaps at the boy to attack him with its weapon. He falls from the railing to the terrace before it can strike him. Getting up, he realizes he is terrified. Seeing the head the monster carried, he understands it was the end. Frightened, he wonders if his end would come that way. His consciousness began to tell him it didn't matter. He had already been planning it. He wanted to put an end to this game. Life was trash, and the world was too. Nothing would change if it ended there or in any other way. But he didn't want it to happen like that. He concludes he didn't want to end it all. Then, picking up an iron bar, he blocks the monster's attack. He knocks him to the ground. The boy says that real death was insignificant. It was miserable and pathetic, and knowing it was like that, he didn't want to end that way. So he resisted the monster's attack. Even more aware of this, he starts shouting that he didn't want to die. That wasn't the way he wanted it in the first place. Thus, he continues holding the iron bar. He prevents the goblin's weapon from striking him. Humans have a state known as the zone. Regardless of the cause, concentration reaches its limits. He enters a perfect state of control over his body and mind. With this in mind, the boy manages to strike between the goblin's legs and knocks it down. It is said that when someone enters the zone, they obtain a perfect glimpse of the world around them. They can intuitively and reflexively decide the best course of action. With the monster on the ground, he strikes it with the iron bar. Ricardo sees the goblin on the ground and is shocked by what he did. After vomiting, he screams in despair. His life until now wasn't real. From the depths of his heart, he feels that he wants to live. The boy wakes up to a voice asking how he is. As he gets up, he notices it was Nishi who thanks him for being alive. Smiling, he says his head was bleeding a lot. This made him worry. Looking at Ricardo, he recognized him. The boy gets up and turns around. The archer tells him not to overdo it. Looking through the fence, he notices the entire city was on fire. Looking around, he sees some students sitting desperately. Among them were Takeda, Tani, and Arata. They were the bullies who beat him. Now they were scared and worried about what was happening. Sakura says it was all impossible. Huyama, the PE teacher, with his arm around her, says to stay together. He would protect her and keep her safe. However, the girl was still worried. Staring at the scene, the other girls comment that he was looking at her in a dirty way. They felt sorry for her. Ricardo looks at a pile of objects. Nishi explains that it's a barricade. It was made from everything they could find to keep the monsters away. Everyone had fled from those mysterious monsters. They desperately ran to the rooftop. There, they set up the barricade. With his hand on his face, Ricardo comments that there were still people left behind in the school. From the other side of the barricade, they begged to be let in. Students had climbed the stairs and pleaded for help, but Wayama and another student said they couldn't undo the barricade. When the archer arrived, all they could hear were screams from the other side. Nishi said he genuinely felt sorry and guilty for not opening the barricade. He believed they wouldn't have survived if he had. Akudo told him it wasn't his fault. No one wanted to meet such an end, and he too had given his all to survive. Looking at the monster's body, the archer asked if Ricardo had done that. He was completely rattled. He had never considered trying something like that himself. He added that if only he had that kind of determination, he might have been able to save those students. They heard screams and saw the PE teacher. He told everyone to assess the situation. They started with the monsters coming out of the phones. Sakura confirmed and showed her phone. It initially seemed to work, but was now completely off. Another student showed that theirs was too. This way, everyone realized their phones weren't turning on. Ricardo's was broken. The teacher lamented that they wouldn't be able to call for help. Like that, Ricardo began questioning what it all meant. The monsters came out of the phones, so everything had to be connected somehow. No monster had emerged from his phone. He wondered if it was because it was broken. Oyama said they weren't getting anywhere, and suggested maintaining the status quo. He proposed waiting for the police or defense forces to rescue them. He asked if everyone understood. Ricardo questioned if he was serious. This left the teacher confused. He explained that since the monsters emerged from phones, it was highly probable they were all over the city. Not just the school, given the prevalence of phones today, especially in Japan. It was highly likely the entire world was in the same condition. He concluded by saying he doubted the police or special forces were in any position to mobilize. Hearing this, the students began to panic. Nishi then asked if they should secure a safer location instead of staying there. Ricardo responded that if they didn't want to end up like that, they should do so. Takeda stood up shouting. He asked why a pathetic person was giving such selfish orders. He approached Ricardo and grabbed him by the collar. He said it seemed Ricardo wouldn't understand unless he taught him a lesson. However, Ricardo didn't respond and just stared at him. This made the boy nervous. Ricardo wondered what had happened to the bully to make him talk so much nonsense. In that moment, the other students agreed with Takeda and started insulting Ricardo. Nishi and Sakura tried to calm everyone down. Takeda asked Ricardo if he was so scared that he lost his voice. All Ricardo thought about was how the bully looked like a chihuahua compared to the monster on the ground. Still trying to provoke him, Takeda demanded something from Ricardo. Ricardo replied that he should stop bothering him over trivial things. It was annoying. Everyone was stunned by his words. Takeda, cursing, tried to punch him. The archer tried to intervene. Ricardo grabbed Takeda's arm. He caught him by the neck and slammed him to the ground. This left everyone shocked by his reaction. On the ground, the student complained about the pain and begged Ricardo to let him go. He called the situation absurd. Ricardo wondered how he had ever been afraid of someone like Takeda. Takeda began insulting and threatening Ricardo. Unable to free himself despite the insults, Ricardo pressed him harder against the ground. Nishi grabbed Ricardo by the arm to stop him. He thought he was crazy. He was certain he'd end up seriously injuring Takeda. Looking at him, Nishi wondered if this was the same person who had been bullied before. The other students witnessing the scene commented in disbelief. After getting up, Takeda continued threatening and cursing at Ricardo. Irritated, the archer yelled at him. He said this wasn't the time for fights. This prompted the bully to back off. Turning to Ricardo, Nishi said it was water under the bridge. Ricardo agreed. Facing the group, Ricardo said that what mattered most was figuring out what to do next. Instead of engaging in meaningless fights, they should focus. Hearing this, the bully kept insulting him angrily. The teacher interrupted. He asked if they could continue the discussion. Nishi called for the teacher and stepped forward. He said that, in summary, there was nothing on that rooftop. He didn't know when rescue might arrive, or, in the worst-case scenario, if they would come at all. They needed a safe place at all costs. They also needed food and water supplies. Ricardo interrupted him. He said that, if possible, they would also need weapons. Sakura asked if such a safe place existed. The archer replied that this was the heart of the problem. Ricardo said they needed to check how things were inside. They couldn't begin without knowing if traveling was even possible. Takeda shouted that he was against it because it was too dangerous. There could be monsters on the way. They should stay and wait for rescue. The teacher commented that the boy was right. They should at least check the hallway. The students opposed the idea. They asked who would want to walk among monsters out there. Then the man called for Ricardo and Takeda. He told both to check the situation inside the building. Takeda was startled upon hearing his name. He said the teacher should go to set an example. The teacher said he would stay to protect the students. The girls agreed, saying that if they were men, they should go. Nervously, Takeda insulted them. Ricardo grabbed the iron pipe he used on the monster. He moved toward the barricade. The frightened boy asked if he was serious. Ricardo questioned him in return. He said the situation would only worsen the longer they stayed there. They would either starve or end up devoured by monsters. Either way, it would end there. He didn't want that, so in this case, they had no choice but to move. Hearing this, Nishi was encouraged and grabbed his equipment. He said Ricardo was right, and that he would go too. There might be other survivors. Oyama, scared, said that if anything happened to the boy, it would be his responsibility. The girls screamed at him not to go because it was dangerous. At that moment, Ricardo called him a hypocrite. Ricardo said he was glad Nishi was coming along. The Chihuahua didn't seem inclined. This left the other wondering about the nickname. Seeing Takeda trembling in fear, he realized the boy was completely like a Chihuahua. The boy asked if Nishi was sure. To be honest, it would be a dangerous exploration. The chances of being attacked were high. With a smile, Nishi said he didn't want to die. He had a reason not to perish. Remembering the image of a girl at a window, recalling his own words, Ricardo told his friend that he seemed reliable. The other replied that Ricardo must have a screw loose, just like him. Somewhat awkwardly, he said he didn't even know Ricardo's name yet. They introduced themselves to each other. Through jokes, they managed to pass through the barricade. Ricardo and Nishi walked through a corridor full of bodies. The archer commented that everything felt like a bad dream. His friend responded that it was just reality. The boy said he understood. He wondered where all the monsters were. He added that he wasn't complaining. He just found it anticlimactic. His friend replied that maybe they left the school and went to the city. Ricardo asked why. He commented that the school had already been closed. He suspected there weren't many prey for the monsters there. They left to find a better place. The archer agreed that this might be true. He said it was horrible to hear. In the middle of their conversation, he noticed something. The boy was about to continue talking. The archer interrupted him. Both heard a slapping sound coming from a distant corridor. They stayed on edge cautiously. Nishi peeked and saw a goblin in the middle of the corridor. He looked at his friend. They agreed they could take it down. If it was alone, then he drew his bow and prepared his equipment. Keeping his distance, he took his time to focus and then fired an accurate arrow. It hit the goblin from behind, piercing its chest. The monster, with its high resilience, didn't go down with the arrow. Looking back, it spotted the archer and let out an attack scream. The archer tensed. Before he could grab another arrow, the goblin rushed toward him with incredible speed. Ricardo intercepted its advance. He struck it directly on the head with a pipe, throwing it away. The goblin, nearly incapacitated, looked back. It tried to recover its strength. The boy appeared in front of it and struck it multiple times, finishing it off. Nishi approached the body and commented that his friend was brutal. As expected, he asked the archer if there were more signs of monsters. The young man said there was nothing nearby and that everything went well. The other agreed amidst his thoughts. Ricardo commented that there were monsters against which humans stood no chance. He recalled the dragons he had seen earlier. Nishi, confused, asked what these monsters were. He remarked that no matter how he looked at them, they all seemed typical of a video game. He added that the monster they just defeated strongly resembled a goblin. Ricardo commented that he had the impression of having seen these monsters somewhere before. Growing more nervous, his companion began trembling. He realized that if the monster had landed a hit on him, he would have actually died. With determination, he clenched his fist and said that now in real life, they were truly putting their lives on the line. The other agreed and added that, unlike a game, they had no leveling system, cheats, or even magic. They were just ordinary humans. The archer said that Ricardo was definitely not a novice. He asked if he had any weapon training or a mentor. Ricardo got lost in his memories. He recalled his brother whom he had defeated in a one-on-one battle. He answered the archer that he never had any training. Nishi asked why he let himself be bullied by those boys, despite having so many skills. Ricardo responded that he didn't know exactly why. The companions continued advancing and found a room on fire, with several bodies on the floor. They pressed on. The archer commented that everything was eerily silent. Apparently, the monster they defeated was the only one on the 6th floor. Ricardo explained that most of the rooms were training areas. There weren't many people on that floor. However, there might be more monsters below. They headed toward the stairs to descend to another floor. Before going down, Ricardo said he wanted to clarify their objectives. Ricardo stated that the goal was to assess the situation. Nishi added that they needed to figure out how many people were in the school and what escape routes were available. The archer emphasized that they needed as much information as possible to take their next steps. His companion said that returning alive with some information was the most important thing. If they were in danger, anyone could leave the others behind to save themselves. Trying to lighten the mood, Ricardo said they were in an emergency situation. No one should hold any hard feelings about such decisions. He joked that his companion was acting tough. Before he could finish speaking, they heard a cry for help from the floor below. Ricardo froze for a moment before rushing downstairs. His companion remarked that he knew exactly what kind of person Ricardo was. He was someone who would never abandon others. On the lower floor, a monster was walking around. It wielded an iron club and resembled a goblin, but was larger and had horns. Tachibana Kotone was hiding in a cabinet. She tried to make no noise. Through a small gap, she was horrified by what she saw. Goblins were stripping her classmates while they cried out for help. She thought she should help them. But no, she couldn't. One of her classmates begged the goblin to stop. It went into a frenzy and attacked her. She closed her eyes and covered her ears. She fell into complete panic over what she was witnessing. She apologized for always doing nothing and running away from everything. In her memories, she saw herself in a crowd watching Ricardo being beaten. He was being assaulted by the class bullies. She recalled thinking she should stop them from committing such violence. Trembling, she tried to ask them to stop. The blonde-haired bully kicked Ricardo in the face. She started apologizing again. She felt sick. Someone placed his hand on her shoulder and called her name. He asked her what was going on and said class was about to start. Barely reacting, she was quickly pulled away by him. He insisted they should leave while Ricardo remained on the ground. Tachibana awakened in the cabinet again. She realized she fainted from the stress of everything she witnessed. In a panic, she wondered what happened to everyone and how long she had been there. Amid her many questions, she tried to take her phone out of her pocket. In her nervousness, it slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. It made a loud noise. She became very nervous. She noticed that the sounds around her momentarily grew louder before falling silent. Still extremely anxious, she realized she heard nothing anymore. She wondered if they noticed her. She was startled by two goblins opening the cabinet door. As the door fully opened, the young woman saw all the bodies in the room. Her friend Misaki was there too. The goblin grabbed the young woman by her hair. It pulled her out of the closet. Then the monster began tearing her clothes. She screamed for help. Another monster appeared and attacked the goblin with a single blow. This left the girl terrified. The others in the room surrounded the monster. With a single strike, it dismantled all the goblins around it. The girl, in complete shock, screamed with all her might for someone to help her. The two young men began running toward the screams. The monster grabbed her with one hand. It dragged the tied-up bodies of the goblins through a corridor. The girl apologized and begged it to let her go. The monster became angry and slammed her against the wall. This knocked her unconscious. Ricardo and Nishi watched the monster from a distance. The archer became scared. He wondered if his arrows could even hurt such a creature. His friend said his instincts were right. The other asked what that monster was. The young man asked if he didn't find it strange that there were so few monsters on the previous floor. He continued, saying the reason was due to this new monster. The boy then realized that the goblins were being killed by a type of monster that was their predator. It stood above them in the food chain. He commented that the monster was much stronger and more territorial. They had no chance of dealing with it alone. Lost in thought, the archer grew worried about the girl. He was startled to see Ricardo getting up. He almost revealed their position as he headed toward the monster. The archer asked what he was doing. The boy replied that he was going to save her because she was still alive. The other asked if he wanted to die. Nishi said that even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to defeat it alone. He asked why he was acting this way. He questioned if it was for self-satisfaction or a sense of justice. He said he was putting his life in danger without even thinking straight. Ricardo said that during the break, the archer asked him if he felt alive. He revealed that he truly wanted to. Facing death because of the monster, he felt in the depths of his heart that he wanted to live. He would never let himself fall that way again. He then said he was going to save the girl because he wanted to. Being able to think this way was proof that he was alive. Nishi said he seemed insane. He asked if dying so stupidly by facing the monster was what he called living. Ricardo replied that he didn't need to come with him. It was his problem alone. In his memory, he saw the figure of his brother. His brother called him incompetent and said he had no money, no family, and no one by his side. Because of all that, he was dead, and should act like it. Ricardo said he felt sorry for the boy. He would never be someone dead again, even if it destroyed him. The archer interrupted him. He grabbed his shoulder. He said he had a sister who wasn't related by blood. She studied at another school. Ricardo asked why she was saying that out of nowhere. The boy replied that he didn't want to die there either, because she would be left alone. As he continued, he said that leaving that girl as she was and running away would be shameful. If his sister were in a similar situation, he would have to help her. He wondered if he would be capable of fighting and protecting his sister. It would torment him if he made up some excuse and just ran away. He then revealed that because of this reason, he was going to help Ricardo take down the monster. Together, they would save the girl. Ricardo said the two of them were going to do something stupid for selfish reasons. He asked if he was okay with that. Nishi laughed and said the archer also had something wrong in his head. The archer, embarrassed, said a man must have his pride. After coming to an agreement, they began thinking about how to execute their plan. Nishi asked his friend how he planned to do it. Just going in head-on would be too risky. Ricardo revealed that if the other fought, he had an idea. With that, the two started planning. The girl woke up to find herself tied to a wooden plank along with several goblins. The monster was roasting them as skewers. While eating, the monster noticed the girl had woken up. In terror, she let out a loud scream. This prompted the two young men to move and initiate their plan. At that moment, the archer said, as he ran, that after hearing Ricardo's plan, he was sure the young man was completely out of his mind. The girl, in despair, began to think she wouldn't leave alive. She would be devoured by the monster after being burned in the fire it set up. Crying, she started saying she didn't want to die. The monster noticed she was moving again and approached her. It knocked her down and grabbed the wooden plank to which she was tied. It carried her toward the fire. As they got closer to the flames, she panicked. However, both noticed Ricardo at the door. He told her to close her eyes. The monster dropped the plank and grabbed its club. It approached the boy with its iron club. Ricardo pulled out a fire extinguisher. He sprayed it in the monster's face, temporarily blinding it. While the monster was blinded, Ricardo ran toward Tachibana and untied her. She called his name. He said he didn't know her and was just helping. In her thoughts, the girl said it was obvious he didn't remember her. She wondered why he would even remember her. Realizing his knife wasn't cutting the ropes, he switched to plan B. He banged a pipe on the floor to signal Nishi. The archer understood the signal and was incredulous. He realized they would have to carry out his friend's crazy plan. Approaching Ricardo, Nishi said he wasn't confident about the plan. He would do his best shot and asked not to be blamed if he missed. The monster, regaining its senses, saw Ricardo kneeling in front of the girl. Enraged, it roared, shattering all the windows. Ricardo raised the pipe. The furious monster lifted its iron club to attack. He thought that if he made any wrong move, it would all be over. Observing the attack pattern, he used a technique called Kirito Shishitogi to parry and redirect the monster's attack to the side. Successfully blocking it, he felt both surprised and relieved. The boy remarked that it had been a long time since he used that technique. His muscle memory hadn't failed him. Ricardo stood still, holding a metal bar against a demon-like monster. Quickly, the opponent tried to strike the protagonist. It caught him off guard, but Ricardo managed to defend himself. At that moment, the boy slightly altered the attack vector. Instead of opposing the opponent's attack head-on, the battle continued between them. Ricardo strategized to minimize the impact of the opponent's strikes. He countered with minimal force. He attacked the monster's feet. It's explained that this is a technique used in modern kendo. The protagonist remembered his father. He acknowledged that he never forgot the skills his father taught him as a child. Ricardo silently thanked his father for the teachings. The girl watched the boy's battle with the monster. She thought it was incredible. Trying to stay calm, the protagonist reminded himself that these were just monsters without proper techniques. Angry, the demon seemed to prepare for another attack. Without waiting long, it swung a blow toward the boy. Ricardo defended himself as best he could using his techniques. Intent on crushing the boy, the monster continued attacking ferociously. Using his skills, the protagonist landed a precise strike on the opponent's wrist. He thought to himself that the adversary only relied on brute force to swing its weapon. The two continued fighting, growing angrier at each other. Once again, the demon tried to attack with its spiked club. To Ricardo, the monster's attack seemed broad and monotonous. Full of skill, the boy managed to land a blow on the monster's head. He admitted that such a strike would be much easier against a human opponent. The monster screamed in pain and appeared weakened. The girl, observing the scene, was amazed that the boy could defend against all the attacks. She thought he was incredible. Showing slight fatigue, the boy still refused to give up. He explained that even though he was defending himself, the impacts were taking a toll on his body. He knew he couldn't sustain the fight for much longer. As his strength began to wane, the monster regained its focus. The boy realized that despite giving it his all, it wasn't working. Deciding to retreat defensively, he reflexively dodged the attacks. Studying the giant monster, Ricardo concluded that a frontal attack was impossible. He decided to move quickly to attempt a final strike. From a distance, he called out to the demon to grab its attention. Once again, smoke started pouring from the monster's ears, a clear sign it's preparing to attack. The opponent looks back toward the girl, who is tied to the wooden log on the ground. He grabs the wooden log where the girl is restrained and tries to advance using it as a weapon. While the girl screams, Ricardo realizes he's in serious trouble in this situation. Brutally, the demon attacks with the wooden log. Outside the building, the sounds of the battle can be heard. Things in the environment are being broken. The protagonist tries to run as the monster swings wildly. With the girl tied to the wooden log, Rakudo is faster and manages to escape as the demon roars. The girl is left alone, feeling a bit upset for being abandoned. Playground is shown. Two boys are bullying the girl as a child, while she cries, crumpled up in a corner. Someone shows up to defend her. It's Rakudo, and he asks why they are bullying the little girl. Back in the present day, the girl reflects on how the protagonist has always been like that, risking everything for someone else. She cries while still tied to the wooden log. A boy observes from outside and says he's about to jump in and help with the fight. He sees Raccoon defending himself against the monster. The guy is amazing for managing to do so, but he believes that Ricardo is reaching his limit. Walking toward the battle, the boy asks the protagonist to hold on and drag the demon about 10 more meters. His steps quicken as he hurries to the scene. Arriving at the location, his expression darkens as he declares that this is where he'll put an end to the story. Without failing, the protagonist keeps running, luring the monster at one point. Recruiter looks back and tries to hit the opponent with his iron bar. Exhausted, he puts all his strength into the swing to strike the enemy, but his grip falters and the demon lands a direct hit. Kudo is thrown far away. The boy is injured and lies on the ground, to the despair of the girl who witnesses the scene nearby. The boy who came to help also sees what happened. Everyone shouts for Kudo-san. He lies on the ground, unable to move. Watching the scene, the boy with the arrows analyzes the situation. As Dire Nishi remembers his friend's advice, he must aim at one specific point and cannot miss, as there's only one chance, and if he fails, the boy will die. As he observes, Nishi is still unsure if he can shoot the arrow. He thinks about the 3 conditions for hitting the target. The angle, the distance, and everything necessary for a perfect shot are not ideal. However, Nishi knows there isn't much time as he could be discovered. Thinking deeply, he wishes the monster would get a bit closer and turn. to present a perfect angle for the shot. The doubt lingers as waiting too long might cost him the chance. While his thoughts are racing, he has interrupted Rikuto. Even injured and on the ground, shouts for him not to shoot. Michi becomes even more confused and unable to understand. His friend loudly says he needs to be a few meters closer and asks him to wait as he gets up from the ground again. Face to face with the demon once more, the protagonist's actions are observed by the boy hidden nearby. Tied to the wooden log, the girl cries and calls out for Ricardo. Unfazed, the monster approaches again. Exhausted, Ricardo coughs and begins to hunch over. Suddenly, the young man drops to his knees. The demon believes it's his moment and starts shooting lightning from his eyes. As the protagonist watches, he gets up from the ground again and places the iron bar in front of him to defend himself. Even so, the young man thinks his legs are weak and wonders if he can keep leading the monster a few more meters. Furious, the opponent growls and roars. The clash between the two continues relentlessly. Michi is startled by the intensity of the roar. The girl tied to the log begs Ricardo to run, saying the monster will kill him, but he tells them not to worry about him. With a determined expression, the protagonist stares down the demon again, desperate. The girl asks why and says she doesn't deserve to be rescued by him,